very interesting and very helpful to us as we think as a congregation about moving forward. The purpose today, as you probably realize, is really to get a download and update from Kristen about what the Pathfinders have assembled from listening activities, really the first phase of the process in working through a revitalization effort for our congregation. So emphasis on the first phase, right? We're not trying to make decisions, jump to conclusions today. We're just trying to listen, gather that listening in an organized way, and understand the messages that we've gotten so far from talking to people, surveys, listening to the community, etc. And with that, I will introduce or reintroduce, welcome Kristen Wiersma, who's our consultant from the Joshua Group. We've been in conversation with Kristen for about the last year, I think, about this process. And she's very specifically been engaged with us since January at Coastside Lutheran. So, Kristen.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Pastor Sue?
Could I just say, I want to make sure that everybody's aware that we're recording this session, okay? For the few people that could let me know that they couldn't be here. So just be aware that we are recording. Okay.
Thank you for that. That's going to be nice to have for you. It is a lot of stuff that we're going to go over, so you might need to go back because your brain might get full, but that's good. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so thank you for that. I want to start us in a word of prayer, and then we'll talk about the agenda and what we hope to do today so that it's clear for you. And then we will start jumping into some of the details that were kind of brought to light. And then we will process if that kind of matches what you see. And then we'll talk about what next steps might be for you. So let's start with a word of prayer. Join me. Good and gracious God, we are so thankful for yet another day of your grace and love, of community through these Zoom meetings, through worship, being fed and connected through Zoom. We thank you for yet another opportunity to come together to care for your people, to care for your church. We ask your blessing in open hearts and open minds as we consider what you are calling us to be brave, to be bold, to bring the good news that you have for us to all in the Coastside area. We thank you for these good people gathered, for the courage to step forward and spend some time taking care of their ministry. And we ask that you would bless this process. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So thank you, first of all, courage to this congregation and its leaders for going through a time of listening. It is not an easy one. It takes some work. And we have good people on the task force, the Pathfinders group that have done incredibly hard work, fast work actually, in gathering people and sending out information and organizing important events in order for this to happen. So I want to acknowledge those people that are on right now. We have Nicole, can you wave? Nicole? Yep, and Russ, who's off screen right now, and Michael, who's got the forest there for us to walk through. There she is, big heart. We also have Teresa Adams and Mark Lose, and is that it?
I think so.
Okay, good. And just as I say his name, he arrives. Isn't that amazing? All right. Anyway, thank you to that group for their hard work, and certainly to Pastor Sue for continuing to be the connection with the congregation and encouraging us in all the activities that need to happen to take place, all the communication. So it takes courage. Let me just say this, to go into a time of intentional assessment of yourself. That is a really hard and brave thing to do, especially when you're not feeling top of your game. So I just want to say how important this is for the congregation, and that it's a brave move. And so I appreciate that. So what we're going to do today, the agenda is today that I'm going to share with you the results of each of the assessments that I did. And then I'll give just enough so you understand what we did. And then I'll give you a culmination kind of observations. There's a big fancy report with a lot of words. If you want to read, you're welcome to it. I'm going to show you some PowerPoints that kind of have some summary data in them. And then next week, I will be sure to kind of summarize it in a shorter piece for the congregation if folks are interested in a little bit of a shorter conversation. The most important thing is that you remain open. This is what you all have said. I do not have an agenda for this congregation, nor have I come up with a solution for all things. So this is, at this point in the process, is just feeding back to you what you've told me, so that you can see yourselves clearly, kind of a more accurate sense of where you are, so that we can make good decisions for the future, no matter what direction that is. So this is an important time to simply hear what your brothers and sisters have shared, and think about what it means as we move forward. So what I want to do is talk about the three, there are three assessments that we did. We actually did 4 activities together, but I did not include the information about the community listening panels because so many of you were on there, and we can talk about what that means for the congregation later. But we have one that was called the Missional Assessment Profile, and that was an online survey that many of you took. 30 people took. And then we had a leadership systems inventory that was to gauge the kind of leadership style and sense of how decisions get made. And that was called the LSI. And so we have that. And then we have the results of the interviews. And I was able to interview 33 people, which is really great. So that was a nice, not everybody, but a lot of people. And that gives us a strong sense of some general themes. There was a lot of good data. There is a lot of tangents that we could go off on because a lot of people shared really important things. But we're really going to stick to the stuff that kind of stacks up on each other so that we can kind of get a sense of what are the common themes from. So we're going to do, hold on 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. So this is the listening report, and you can you're welcome to take a look at this. This is not a document that it's 15 pages long. It is not a document that usually congregation members use because it's really for decision making from the leadership, but it is not you don't need to hide it. It's just a really deep dive. So it has kind of summative information from what we talked about, the missional assessment profile, the leadership systems inventory, the interviews, and acknowledging that the community listening panels are in there. I share with you what I think are some of your kind of strengths and assets, and then what are some needs and challenges. And then later we'll talk about a travel plan, which starts to recommend areas of focus. Now, just know that you all have complete autonomy to make decisions about what you want to do. I have no power. I am simply walking with you and sharing information and processes that can help you. So I just want you to know that this is information for you to make good decisions. So the goals, before we jump into the individual reports of those documents, we're really focusing on how willing and ready is Coastside's culture to embrace meaningful change for renewal, to revitalize, as your theme has been. What are the key areas of focus that can help you move forward? And what's the best pathway for leadership? To inform leadership, what is the best way for them to grab hold of some topics and move forward that have the best possible chance of bringing change? So this is just me listing all the things that we did. In case you forget, 30 people or so took the map. We did 2 listening panels with bunches of people, and then we did the systems, leadership systems. So let's now, I'm going to stop and I'm going to share. Let's let's see, let's share the map. And this is the one that's about the whole congregation. Let me just move things around here. Sorry. So this is just simply a look at what people are kind of understanding about the impact and effectiveness of your church. So this is just a very beginning point. This is numerical data. And so we use both quantitative, which is numbers, and then stories, which is the interviews, to really get a sense, kind of wrap our heads around what's happening. And again, this is a starting spot. So this isn't telling us, whether you're good or not. This is just kind of getting a temperature, taking the temperature. So here's who took this. Again, we had 30 people, which is about 63% of your average worship attendance, or was, who knows with COVID. But here are some information then about some of the people that took it. You're very educated. A really interesting mix of percentages of length of time at the congregation, which is actually very helpful, because then we're making sure that we have people who've been there, fewer number of years, and people who've been there for a long time. So, and I'm sure that the numbers, the ages aren't completely off. That's pretty common. Whoops, let's see, there we go. All right, here's distance to church, children, and attendance. Self-reporting, these are folks saying. So you have quite a lot of folks who are close by, which is nice, because that helps with programming decisions when you get together in person. And very small number of folks with children under 18 in the house, which also probably isn't it. So here's, this is an example. This is just telling you how to read the data. So what we look for is very strong and agree and strongly agree, because we want people to be really excited about being connected to your church. So we want them to feel strongly. We want them to feel very connected. We're assuming that if a person is feeling really good about how the church is doing, they're going to be more emphatic. And so we want really much more strongly agree. That shows energy, which is one of the reads for the health of a congregation. You can look at the numbers and which way they go. You can look at whether people are in the strongly agree, or if you've got people spending time down here in the agree and disagree, and the numbers that shape it. And that kind of just tells you where is the emphasis, where's the energy, where's people's sense of their value of what the topic is of the question. And then look at the middle group, the neither agree nor disagree. We call these the fence sitters, because they're sometimes, I don't know, either they don't have an opinion or they're ambivalent. And these folks are really important. And the reason they are is because sometimes people who love their church, often people really, really love their church, but they don't always like the way it feels or what's going on. And so they will, even if they love it, they don't want to be negative about it. So they'll kind of do, I don't know. And sometimes if there's a real large group of these, we see that those folks are waiting to see what happens. They're not quite sure how they feel about change or anything that else that's going on. And so they oftentimes don't know how to weigh in, but they're kind of waiting to see what happens. They're going, is this church going to move in a certain direction or not? And that will really instruct how they're going to affiliate with the church, or whether they're going to leave, or whether they're going to give any more energy. And at the bottom, you'll see this kind of whale coming up on top of the water. That is actually the distribution of the scores in kind of a, I can't remember the name of the scale, but it helps you kind of see in a visual way where people landed. So if it's very thin, not very many people, and where it's thick, the more people. So that just gives you a visual. Sometimes that can be helpful. The other thing we talk about before we get into your data is that we are all in the promised land. We are not trying to save ourselves. We have that well taken care of by a God who loves us and promises us great and beautiful lives connected to each other through Jesus. So this is not a matter of, we have to work harder so that we can be saved, or we have to work harder so we can be accepted. This is literally already been taken care of. So it's more about, can we be more efficient and effective in this promised land of faith community that God has called us to? So we have kind of discovered that there are really 4 postures of congregations based on their level of energy and their level of belonging. So whether people feel real connected and find ways to get hooked in and have relationships, and then whether or not there's good energy for moving forward. And these are the kind of the 4 areas. The first one is stationary. This is, all these are really common, actually. This is a landscape where the church ministry is happening, but it doesn't feel like there's much movement or growth. Sometimes people would say, we feel kind of stuck. We're not sure which direction to go in and where to put energy. In the nostalgia corner, this landscape is a place where the church is actually feeling okay, but we're not really moving very fast and forward. Sometimes churches hang out in here to kind of say, we're doing okay, we're just taking a rest, we're not got a lot of energy, but we feel okay. And sometimes they're just taking a break, or sometimes they get stuck here, actually. So they're not really motivated to change. Puzzle usually has an identity issue. There's a lot of things happening, and there's nothing to kind of organize it or to help people feel like they're on the same page. They might have a lot of energy, actually. They might have a lot of enthusiasm and people doing a lot of stuff, but it's not towards the same goal. And so there's a lot of kind of diffused energy and chaos sometimes. And then finally, there's a group that's kind of got a central vision. So they're organized and they have unity, and they've got good energy. So these are the ones who actually are, when we get to this place in our congregations, we're in a really good place to kind of move forward together. So you need both the energy, the belonging, and the kind of central kind of picture of where you're going. And every church is in a different place. And my job is to help you guys kind of discover where you might be headed. So in looking at your data and in your interviews, we have a lot of sense of belonging. Folks are really happy with the relationships. This is without COVID, of course. And the sense of community and care for one another. But there's just not a lot of energy. People are tired. So we're kind of on the edge of stationary, and a sense also then that kind of close to puzzled, because you're not quite sure about that identity piece and the vision to move forward. So not horrible, but a sense of we need to kind of have a common purpose and then some energy to focus us in a good direction. So these questions, now you can see the question, you can see the blue, which indicates the visual for the scores, and that can kind of help you. Remember, we really want as much strongly agree as possible. All of them are positively worded. So then we want things to move to this kind of right side and to indicate that there's good, strongly agree on this. So I feel a great sense of belonging in this congregation the more I participate in ministries. You got a lot of people excited about this, and that's awesome. That's great. You go, it's kind of common to actually have tails and people who don't quite agree based on their own experience or how they're feeling, and that's okay. We don't have to deal with that, but acknowledge that their voices were heard in this process. In this congregation, I'm a part of something bigger than myself. Some great response there. People feeling like, yes, it's nice to be a part of something. This is when we start to see a little bit of the lack of unity in terms of direction. I would describe the energy as cohesive. You have some disagrees over here, and you got about almost 40% on the fence. I'm not sure how they feel. They love their church, but they're not sure how they feel about it being cohesive. And so you can see that would drain energy from the work of the church. Another measure of this kind of unity is I see myself as integral. Again, not as strong as the earlier experiences. Here's a good one, good health. I believe this congregation is making a difference in people's lives, very strong. We're very excited about that. I like telling others what's going on at this congregation, actually quite a few, I have to say. That's good, that people are proud of what's happening in and through Coastside Lutheran. That's great. Participating in this congregation energizes me. We got a few people, almost a third here, who are like, I'm not sure. And this could be because of that sense of, we don't know why these things happen. So that's why we do interviews. So we'll have a better sense of that. But you can see some people on the fence there going, I'm not sure about this. It's important to me. This church does great stuff, but I'm not sure whether it energizes me. Inviting people to worship. You may have great stuff going on, but you're not really into inviting people to worship, as you can see. And that could be for a variety of reasons. We don't know until we kind of dig around. And sometimes when you're not feeling great about your church, you're less likely to invite people to it because it doesn't feel as strongly connected for you. And it's COVID too, so that could be part of it too. So that was belonging and energy. And now we're going to look at these 4 areas that teach us a little bit more about your congregation and its preparation for change, if change is needed. So culture is really important. It's kind of below the surface oftentimes and is very strong influence in things. So this is about being valuable and welcoming new people. Permeability is what we call it. How do you welcome new folks? So people said, yes, I feel valued as part of this congregation. And that's a great thing. You got a great response. It's easy to engage with the ministries of this congregation. You have some, pretty good 73% agree and strongly agree. So that's great. We want to make sure that you stay accessible so that when new people come, they know how to jump in. They know how to be part of you. We don't want that to be closed off. So that's what that's about. Respect. Let's talk about the level of value for, new ideas and differing opinions and that kind of thing. Not as strong here, sharing difference of opinion. So we want to be really thoughtful about what it means when people don't feel safe to share difference of opinion, or that there's maybe one group making decisions, or sometimes there's no feedback loop for congregations to get ideas from other people. And so that's why this process is great, because it helps us know, okay, whatever we do, we need to make sure that we create a space for difference of opinion, and that it still doesn't matter about how much you're loved, but simply is what a family does when they're making decisions. Congregation respecting people with different views, a little stronger. That's great. Congregational leaders now, this is about trust. So you have that your congregational leaders are open about decisions that are made, and that's great. That's good. We have kind of some folks on the fence, so we got to make sure that we continue to be transparent about our processes. Leaders in this congregation manage the finances effectively. That's still good. We still like the move to the right. That's great. And when making decisions, the leadership considers the perspectives of the congregation. You got a third of the people on the fence here, so we got to probably uncover what that means and find ways for people to weigh in, whatever that is. But just know that that's kind of working in the background. And of course, all of these things affect how people feel. So when you heard about the low energy earlier, all of these things play into that. So if we pay attention to these things, those scores should go up in the energy and belonging. Okay, let's talk about ministry practice. Ministry practice is the things you do as a church to like worship and small groups and all that kind of stuff. And really it's about, do those things do what you want them to do? What's the impact of those ministries? So this is a great score, faith informing my daily behaviors. You'd like to see that blue on the right. Faith is a part of my entire life. Again, that's great. My experience at church influences my daily life. So you have 77 in the agree, and you still have about 23% in the middle. But still, we like to see blue on the right in terms of these kind of faith integration and how faith is influencing daily life. Okay, so here's clarity of purpose. You can see the change in that shape, right? So our sense of mission is an important component for decision making, and a lot of people either are on the fence more than there have been in the past. So I agree. It's good that we're doing this, because this is we're gonna sharpen that and move that entire blob of blue to the right. Our congregation, we have a clear sense of purpose. I'm sensing that people love their church, but don't know quite what we're aiming for. So you can see that. So good read for those of you who said, maybe we should spend some time on this. This has been a good decision. You were right. But people believe that the church is still worth energy and time and affiliation. So you got a lot of people saying, yeah, I do. And, or I'm not sure how this is working out. This is how we do faith formation. So this is service opportunities, worship, small groups, and education. So you can see in service opportunities, it's really interesting. You guys have a very, very, very strong instinct to serve in the local community, and are driven very, very hard to do that. It's very important to your people. It's kind of one of your hallmarks, at least according to the conversations I had. But you can see that people aren't sure what that connection is for faith development. Not sure, how that's building faith. So that's a really interesting thing for us to note, that's that answer. All right, being involved in a group. So these could be small groups, choirs, service groups, whatever. You can see that there's a little bit more movement to the right there in terms of it being important for faith development. You have some people disagreeing with that too, which is kind of interesting. 13, yeah, so 50%. No, 40%. Yeah, that's really interesting. So here's two more questions. One's worship. And so we're glad to see in worship that there's a strong pull to the right there about worship playing an important role in nurturing faith. And then educational opportunities. And I would say in our work, we're seeing less and less as people are busier and not able to attend educational and Bible studies and so forth. This educational one is it's a little more common. We're seeing this being kind of average, which is a huge bummer. But just so you know, again, really glad that worship has a strong response. Yay, relationships, because relationships often keep us at church even when we're going through hard times or not feeling it. And so relationships are kind of glue, right, for our communities. So meaningful relationships, this is great. You do have some people who aren't enjoying that, 20%. So we need to be thoughtful about how to make sure that that's an intentional practice, that we welcome new people and find ways for them to be connected. When we do ministry as a congregation, we're all on the same team. You have some agree and strongly agree, but you also have a lot of people in the middle. And so that probably has a lot to do with the unity piece, unity of purpose, shared purpose. A lot of people are inspired by Coastside. Look at that, 87% are inspired to be part of this congregation, which is awesome. And worship, and you never know if this is COVID or if this would have happened beforehand. So we need to make sure that we continue to focus on worship. Hard right now, but that's where we are. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some other things that influence your congregation, like change, urgency, the worldview, and then priorities. So this helps me know where you are in terms of being ready for change. So our congregation is willing to take risks to fulfill its mission. Not super robust. So that tells me that there's people who are sensing that that's not the case, or they don't want that. So we need to be thoughtful about what kind of change and how we implement it, and so forth. New ideas are supported in this church. And so that's really interesting, because before, remember, we had that difference of opinion wasn't quite welcome. So new ideas are slightly more, so that's interesting to me. I don't know what it means, because these are just numbers, but that's really curious to me. challenges in this congregation are seen as opportunities to grow. This is a great piece because it says that you have some people, over 50%, who say, yes, we have an open mind. This is kind of a growth mindset question. And some people are saying, I don't know. And sometimes those folks are just nervous. They want to know what it is before they kind of jump in with both feet. So we need to be thoughtful about those that are less flexible and adaptable in terms of readiness for change. This tells us how fast your folks are thinking about change. Definitely overwhelming support to make changes in order to live out its mission. So if you were wondering if you have the social capital now to go ahead and implement change, I would say you do, very much so. We don't know what yet, but at least you have people's support on that. And then some people not sure about the timing, and that's okay, because by the time we figure some things out, it will be, and we'll have everybody on board that's going to be on board. This helps us kind of understand worldview. I understand that God is active in the world today, and that there are ways to learn of God's truth outside Scripture. Very common for a church like yours to be like this. This is great. And that you're a part of, your people are a part of what God is doing, which is great. You have nice support there. So that's good. That's healthy. That's good. So we had people prioritize what they would like to focus on, or what they think are kind of top priorities for Coastside Lutheran. And the important thing to note is when you're taking it, you don't know what's what, but in the report, there are some that are just really focused on keeping the place open, right? They're kind of like, we need to grow numbers and attendance and giving so that we can survive. Then there's some that are more, thinking about like, these are some things we could do that might be really influential and have a lot more impact. And then there are some that are like, let's just think outside the box and do something crazy, not crazy, but let's do something kind of different and really have the freedom to embrace a new way of being church for God's world. So actually, your top two, these are the ones that are prioritized on the right. You'll see down towards the bottom. And you'll be, it's not going to surprise you to see that more members and worship attendance is at the top. That was an overwhelming theme because you're nervous, and that's appropriate. But all the rest of the top ones are all like, we need to have a bigger impact, and we're feeling, a little bit more free to imagine different ways that we could be the church. And so there's great freedom in that. Your folks are aware that maybe the way that it has been in the past is not the only way to be church and to meet needs and to build community and to share the good news of Jesus. So that tells me that there's some flexibility built into your church. And besides being worried about numbers, which is the kind of the top thing, that there's some imagination and flexibility in there. So some financial stuff. This congregation encourages me to be a good financial steward. So there are folks who are feeling encouraged in their giving. And this isn't just to church, obviously. These two questions are just generally about generosity and whether that is fed at church. So it's important to give finances beyond the congregation. Yep, we always want to see that too. So this is interesting. So these are people who are guessing what they're going to give next year versus this year. And you can see that there are people, quite a lot of people saying the same. And then you have some folks who are saying more, which is kind of exciting and trusting that based on kind of what they're seeing, they're ready to invest a little bit more. So that's kind of fun to see. This is why people give. And this is a really helpful outline. When we see recessions or churches that are a little bit more unstable in their giving, it's because the influence of giving is based on something besides faith. So maybe they're worried about, maybe if there's been like somebody that I had a church where somebody embezzled some money. So how well our church manages its finance was one of the top ones. Well, that's not I understand in a time of trauma, that might be an appropriate thing, but we like to see that people give because they understand it's connected to their faith and it's an active faith. So very healthy reasons for giving. Here is your income, self-reported from your people. So you can kind of see the variety. You got quite a variety, actually, in an inexpensive area to live. So you can see that there needs to be some variety of ways that people can give, and the ways that you talk about giving need to stay flexible, because you have quite the range of people in their ability. So the next one is giving, self-reported giving to the church. And what I will say before we get to the slide is it should, in a good and perfect world, mimic this one we're looking at now. We would hope that people would give as they're able, and so it would match, the bar charts would match this, so that there would be 27% that are giving, over on the right, larger amounts, and the three kind of equal bars. And you can see that there's some room for growth here. We have a lot of people, and for a variety of reasons, it could be that it's just really expensive and they're giving what they can, but there's a lot of room to grow. And so we usually flip back and forth, because we would like to see this breakdown in your giving. So I think there's some room for growth. So that's probably exciting. So here are some kind of key things to keep in mind. The kind of takeaways from this strong sense of belonging, but you got some low energy, and that could be connected to the sense of cohesiveness, that people don't feel kind of unified. People believe in your mission, making a difference in the world, but don't really know what that mission is. You got strong relationships. There's a difference between giving and income. So there may be some good opportunities there. Definitely an openness for change. I didn't mean to put worship in there. Lower impact of ed and service on faith development. So that's really interesting, that maybe they're not as tightly connected as we think, or maybe we need to pinch, we don't know. We'll have to do some investigation. Great personal faith of the folks there. 30% say that they're going to be giving more next year, and you have great entrepreneurial ideas for ministry. So I'm going to, this is available, and maybe Henry and Pastor Sue can share the document with folks who want to see it. But any questions on that one before we roll to the next one? We got a lot to do in an hour and 20 minutes. And I can answer at the very end when I put all of these together. Any questions about that particular? Okay, if you're okay, I think I'll just keep marching forward so that we can get to all of, oh yeah, Pastor Sue, your mute's on.
There we go. Okay, so right at the beginning of the chart, there was something called an environmental
Scan.
Something scan. Yeah.
The environmental scan is just my way of saying we took a look at everything. So we looked outside at the community listening panels. We looked inside through the map and the interviews.
Got it. Okay.
It's just a way of saying we looked at everything. Fancy words. All right. So let's look at leadership. So we noticed that, and it's very common, by the way, when churches experience some distress or change, decrease in number of people, that systems start to look different, because we start to focus on, making sure that decisions get made, especially in a COVID time when we're kind of in survival mode. So it's pretty common that some of these things, but let's take a look at, let me get back to the beginning here. Let's look at the leadership systems inventory. And the reason we do this is because if we're going to make any changes at all, we need to make sure that our leadership system, which is the system that brings everybody together and along the way, is in good shape, because it's the engine, right? That really is gonna be helping move us along. So let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. Can you see that? All right. So leadership systems inventory, again, this is to really just get a sense of how the leadership is feeling right now, because we might need to do some work with leaders to get ready for some other things, depending on what we're going to change. So again, the same thing, we want as much of the red bars to the right, because that all these are positively stated. And so the stronger to the right, the stronger people feel about them. So you'll see that there's some tiredness and I think probably frustration as you guys have started to go, oh, what are we focusing on? And feeling frustrated about that. So, and because you're using the same people, because there's just less people to step up in those roles. So that's super common when you feel like you're on the board forever or the council forever, and you're having less and less people and resources to do the work. So you can see that people are feeling a little bit, they're not sure about if their gifts are utilized, and there's a little bit more spread about whether people are excited to be in leadership. And that just tells me that you're probably kind of tired. That's pretty common. Eager to discuss the possibilities of tomorrow. Obviously, we are here doing this assessment and getting ready to talk about the future. So I think there's a bunch of people saying, I don't know. And then some people saying, yeah, I think we are. So that shows kind of variations in how people are prepared or experiencing leadership. Exciting energy levels. You can see that we don't have super strong energy levels. In fact, we got some pretty strong disagree, 44% saying, I just am tired. So we got to pay attention to that and steward this leadership. Let's see. Bring new people. Well, we talked about that. There hasn't been a lot of new people to bring in. And so your expanding influence of leadership has been limited. And so that does a couple of things. One is it makes people feel like we're circling the drain, and you start to worry and feel like we're just failing right into nothingness. And so there can be some despair on the part of leaders. So we want to be really thoughtful and careful about who we have in leadership. And you can see these scores kind of showing what happens when people feel like it's the same people and there's really no other choice because we're feeling stuck with our choices. So another question about energizing, you really have a split here. You don't have anybody on the fence. In fact, you have some who are tired and some who are invigorated. And neither one is wrong, by the way. It's just a description of where you are. You have a little bit more support for each other on the right-hand side. Most of our leaders feel supported by each other. That's nice. 67%, that's good. And hopefully we can think about ways that we can increase that, because that'll increase energy, of course, when people feel supported. Most of our leaders believe they're an important part of living out mission. You can see that's a little bit stronger to the right. Interesting, on the right here, we equip our leaders with resources to be effective. So people are not feeling like necessarily like they have what they need in order to do the work. So we got to think about that too. Establish guidelines that inform our planning process. So that tells me that there is some work to do to look at the processes in the organization. And I think I have some clues about that from interviews, but this means that there's some work to do to kind of rebuild systems so that you don't have to make up new ones every time, which can be exhausting, but there can be some planned ways so that it happens the same way every time. Regularly plan for our future. It looks like there's a split there. Really interesting. So you have quite a wide variety of people who are experiencing leadership. See, this is also interesting. Our leadership is intentional about inviting the Spirit, as in the Holy Spirit, as in God, into the conversation. So it looks like you got some who think so and quite a lot who don't or are not sure. So that tells me that could be an area of growth where it's never enough help in our processes. So we have to make sure that we're growing in faith as leaders and making sure that's built into the way that we do our leadership, because that makes stronger leaders. Again, an overall plan. I think we've covered it in the map that this is something that's really needed. And I think when leaders don't have a clear plan, or they don't sense that they don't have a clear plan, they can just really get tired, because again, they feel paralyzed. They're not sure what direction to go into, and it can be really tiring. And the ministry feels organized. You can see this. People are feeling like maybe we have to make it up every time, or we're not quite sure. Who are we following? What are we following? Are there protocols and practices and structures and systems? So it looks like we could use a little work to clarify all of that to help leaders feel less tired, less worn out, and more willing to serve. Again, this is about the number of people. And there's 44% is saying we're including as many people as possible. So that's good. And you have a huge split on decision consistency. So how we make decisions, how we talk about things. And some of this could be, you might have a consensus group at one point, and then you have another team where you vote. So there could be different decision making also, but it feels like maybe it's changing a lot, and that's taking a toll on your leaders. Looks like you're giving just information to folks primarily on decision making, that there's some good access. At 22% maybe aren't paying attention, so they don't know. And then some strong numbers about building trust. So that's good. They feel like you're moving in the right direction, and that's always a good thing. And then leaders taking an active role at arriving for decisions. So this is like, does one person make all the decisions for us, or do the leaders together take an active role? And it looks like there's a mix of opinions, but in general, there is some sense that there's a group making decisions, which is awesome. Not sure about the action. Looks like there's a lot of talk and not sure which way to go, which could be some of the stuckness that you feel, which is why you called me. And so that's very common, right? You don't know which direction to put energy in because you just don't know, have a process to be able to figure that out. So that's probably where that's coming from. There is some concern about, we don't know how to give feedback. So we can make sure that we think about how people can participate in both the learning of the topics that are in front of leadership and giving voice as far as feedback for decisions in the future. We have defined ways to ensure this is accountability, right? So it looks like there's not quite maybe commonly used, regularly used ways for accountability, and a mix of folks maybe not quite agreeing on, are we learning from what we're doing? Which actually is hard to do when you're feeling stressed out. It's hard to take that time to do assessment. Like, what did we learn from that? So that's also something to keep in mind. And this is interesting. This is about taking risks to fulfill our mission. So we need to think about this. So you have 44% of leaders who are saying, yeah, we are as a church together. You've got 22% of the people saying, I have no idea, or I don't know, or I'm not willing to say. And you got 33% of the people saying we are not willing. Whether that's an I'm not willing or our congregation's not willing, we don't know, which is why we do interviews. But that's a really interesting. So that tells me, like, you're not ready to go tomorrow to make a change. There's some work to do here to make sure everybody's on the same page, as they say. Communication. There's a mix about whether people feel communicated with, but you have strong scores. You guys behave well, must behave well, because there's strong response about healthy and respectful conversation for leaders, which is good. Communication for members looks like in general you do, so that's good. It might be that there hasn't been mechanisms that have, so that 22% might be that there's just not mechanisms advertised in ways to do that, forums to do that. This is that difference of opinion. And this will be interesting to parse out, because when you're thinking about even clarifying your mission and values and vision and so forth, we want to make sure that we create spaces that are safe for people to share different perspectives. So we need to pay attention to anything that doesn't say that we're all, open and willing. So we need to make space and be really thoughtful about how we do that work, so that we can really make sure that it's a space where people feel comfortable sharing difference of opinion and weighing in. So this is about Pastor Sue and Pastor Dawn before her. This is what what the leaders think that the pastor's role should be, which is really interesting to me. and she might be surprised about what they're expecting. And sometimes this can be good information for conversation. But 100% saying that she's the energy for doing ministry, which is kind of interesting. Overseeing all planning, worship planning. So that's got a really high score. Walking alongside leaders, supporting ministry, 67. Leading staff, 67. Casting a vision. That's a little bit less. That might be a sense that things need to be shared with leaders and pastors. Oftentimes that there's a sense that should be shared. Equipping and nurturing, and then administration falling to the bottom. So that would be interesting to talk with you, Pastor Sue, about what your sense is. Did you know that? And how does that fit with what you sense your call is there? That would be a fun conversation. Okay, that's it. Let's questions about the LSI.
So all of the charts and everything, the feedback, was that based on the surveys and the interviews, or
No.
just the surveys?
Yeah, just the survey. So I'm going through each unit, kind of each thing, and then we'll talk about what I found as trends through the whole thing. I think you were just jumping on when I said that. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So just kind of trying to dig into each tool to see what was, and then we'll kind of line those up and see what patterns emerge.
Yeah, and the vision piece with Pastor that you just talked about, I don't think Pastor Sue has been, has led the congregation long enough to get dinged for that, right?
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, that's good. That's good, Mark. I appreciate that. I'm sure she does too.
Yeah.
I do. So, Chris, in the chart, set of charts that you just showed, just to clarify, that was only the 9 leaders that responded to the
Correct.
LSI, right? That was what the congregation was saying. That was just what we were kind of saying internally to what's happening.
Yep. So your leaders, but that also tells you, because that's usually the group that's making decisions. And so it's good to pay attention to them too, in addition to the issues that are arising in the map.
Yeah, no, I was just about some of the communication things where that it was more internal to the leadership group versus the congregation saying the leaders are not,
Right.
Okay.
No, that is just leaders being hard on themselves, obviously. All right. So any big questions about that? All right. You guys are easy. So now I'm going to walk through the kind of culmination report, and then what my recommendations would be in terms of where to put energy. Again, remember, this is totally your ship to steer. So I'm just walking with you. I've got no power here. So you can process whether these things feel true for you as a congregation, how you feel about that. You might be surprised, you might be mad, you might be embarrassed, you might be hopeful, you might be fearful, you might be excited that things are starting to be put on the table, and now that you can finally have conversations about these things that matter. So any of those emotional responses are just fine. Of course, we want to make sure that you guys get time to process it. So here is what I think are the kind of the top things from the missional assessment profile that we talked about first. Strong sense of belonging, you make a difference, you got strong relationships. I think there's an openness to change for mission. Strong personal faith, you've got some people indicating they're going to give more. And you've got some really entrepreneurial ideas for ministry. That is kind of unique. That gives you some freedom. I actually get really excited about that. Some challenges that came through in the congregational map is the lowered sense of energy. Less cohesiveness than you would like to see, I'm sure, than is helpful. Less space for difference of opinion. And I think the next one, that there was kind of this missing, like, what are we all aiming for and desiring to have a common purpose. The giving right now doesn't mirror the income in terms of, we just like to see more people, even if it's not to the same exact level, at least people really embracing that generosity piece in light of their own income. We would like to see a little bit higher impact of the things that you're doing for faith development. And you do have a little bit of folks who are nervous about opportunities and change. So we want to be really careful and thoughtful about how we would embrace any kind of change, even if it's how we meet or how we do things. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge revolutionary ideas. From the leadership assessment or leadership systems assessment that we just went through, kind of some themes that were positive was there's willingness to change. Y'all feel supported, leaders, and leadership is important to mission. And I would agree with that. And I'm glad that that is identified because that is a really strong building block for whatever is next. Some things that I saw in the leadership assessment that are challenges, again, that low energy, I called it recycling of leaders, but the idea of the same people, you know, you have less people to choose from in terms of getting on and off council in positions of leadership, less sense of being equipped to be leaders in this time, especially probably. As congregations get smaller, they tend to let go of some of the systems and structures of when they were bigger than they needed to run the place. And so they start kind of letting go of some of the committees or some of the systems that helped them run when they were a little bit bigger. Because maybe they don't feel like they need it, or, you know, it's a smaller group. But what happens is then you have to reinvent those all the time. And then that gets tiring and people get really confused. So there's some systems that we could probably put into place and reinstitute that might be more helpful and make your leaders less tired. Some inviting spirit into the work. There's some space to increase the learning and kind of faith development of our leaders to make sure that their cup is full, as we like to say, so that they have a kind of a spiritual sense and health so that they can bring that to leadership. Lack of plan, kind of a vision and future plan. We already know that. And a low sense of organization. So those are kind of some themes that I picked up in those two documents. So I listened to 33 people, and I will just say I have some strengths and stuff, but at the bottom are some of my notes that people shared with me. And I didn't repeat everybody's, but I tend to put in ones that where there were multiple people who said the same thing, so that you got a sense of what was important. Great interviews. People love this church. They are thrilled to be a part of it. They're thankful for it. The worship and the connection, the relationships, particularly strong sense of welcoming community. A lot of people said, I just felt loved. It felt like home. I walked in the door and people wanted to know my name and kind of love me right into the community. So that's a great thing. That's hard to build. So I'm glad that you're starting with that. Some importance of worship and music, which I'm always, as a Lutheran, glad to see that that's still at the center of what you believe your life is about. Importance of service to community, a lot of people, and you guys are doing a lot of work right now. And so there's a really strong sense that you're called to make a difference in the community. And that's an important part of your identity. And there was an awful lot of people who appreciated the online worship and hope that there's ways to continue to provide online access even once you're back in person. So that was really interesting that was shared quite a lot. Some challenges that I heard, people, and again, this is not going to be a surprise for you, saying we're not quite sure what we're working towards. We're not sure what's driving decisions because we're kind of feeling lost right now with kind of the change in our own demographics, the change on the coast, a sense of maybe the things we are doing aren't working anymore or aren't working the way we expect them. So not sure where we should put energy. There are some tired folks, some burnout from volunteering, some anxiety, lots of anxiety about, are we going to disappear? And so then there's fear, and it's hard to be creative and thoughtful when you're fearful and anxious. So just know that that's at play. Your folks are worried. Coast, honestly, some of your challenges are just in the demographics and kind of context around you about the cost of living, cultural challenges, busy people. It's not that you're so much doing things wrong in why you have less people now than you did before. The whole world's moving that way. And so there you have to acknowledge that there are some forces then that are kind of working against what you've been up to over the last decades. You've got so much community service, in my opinion, that there's burnout and people are getting tired. They're not quite getting fed spiritually in faith as much as they're feeling frenetic about meeting the needs around them. That could also be because of COVID, I don't know. But a sense that your church is trying to do a lot of things for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And there's a real sense of kind of diffused impact. We're doing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And while people can do that stuff on their own, there's a strong sense that we want to do it for the church, but do we have to do all of it? We're just doing so very much, and some of us are getting kind of tired. And just realizations that you're a smaller congregation with fewer families than you used to. And so you need to, whatever assumptions about how you built your congregation you need to kind of come to the realization that you're not where you were before. And so you can make good decisions about where you want to put energy. So here's all the notes. I'm not going to read them because you're intelligent people. Feel free to get a hold of this document. But if there's no questions, yell out if there's no questions. Otherwise, I'm going to move on just in terms of time to what I think this kind of culminates in. Are there questions about the interviews?
Kristen, I have a question.
Yes.
Around the community service.
Yeah.
Was the community service that people were feeling burned out on, like the stuff that our congregation is doing, or that the stuff that they are doing in general?
No, well, yeah, it was a sense that like there's the book fair and the pumpkin thing, and there's the breakfast thing and the sandwich making thing. And then when they heard the community listening panels, they were feeling like, oh, there's so much more to do, and kind of this, we're feeling overwhelmed, and it's hard for us to take care of our own church because we're spending all this energy. So there's this, that we do a lot for little church, you're doing a lot.
Okay.
Does that make sense? We're in COVID, right, Pastor Sue? So some of it was like, when we get back to, we got the book thing, and we got the, what are your other things? The pumpkin thing, and the breakfasts, and there's a couple other things that people were talking, the community garden project, stuff like that. And they were just saying, we're doing so much, and there's so few of us that it's hard to take care of the church in the way it needs to be taken care of, and do all these things. So.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Kristen, I just wanted to ask on you, as you listed those comments from the interviews, were you giving weight or priority to the way you listed those, or not? Because the first one was just interesting to me. What draws you to Coastside Lutheran is being Lutheran.
Yeah, a lot of people said it's because I'm Lutheran and I found a Lutheran church.
Right.
And because there's going to be less and less of that, you can rely on that less and less in the future, right?
That was the corollary I was thinking of. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially with kind of the shifts in the coast, like cost of living and who's moving in and who's moving out.
That's the traditional Lutheran recruitment, boats and babies, right?
Right. Exactly. Any other questions? Great questions. Hearing none, I will roll on. Let's see here. So I have some just general observations. Again, these are reflective, and hopefully they're not meant to be, mandates for you to do, but simply help you. So these are the things that I found to be the most powerful assets that you have. You've got some really great stuff going for you. You have strong relationships in the congregation and a sense of community. I did not find any large schisms or conflict or anything like that that might be causing dysfunction and might get in the way of making a decision about the future. So that's good. I was happy to see that people still sense the importance of worship. That's good. And we can continue to put energy and time and leadership into that. There is obviously the centrality of your community service. And that's just my word for serving out in the community. Some people called it outreach. Some people called it community development. Some people called it, volunteering or whatever. That is part of your, that is part of who you are, a sense of let's serving neighbor. But again, I think it needs to be scaled to keep in line with who you are, and what size you are and what you're trying to do. And then of course you have a beautiful building and a beautiful land and beautiful location that are all great things for you and could be built on. Some of the big challenges that I see throughout in all these conversations and assessment tools is obviously the lack of clarity and unity of purpose. That just comes through loud and clear. Not so much that like we're not sure what God's doing, but more like we're not sure how to jump on in what God is doing in this time, in this way, with who we are as a church right now. I sense that there's a need for deepened faith, that people, and part of this, guys, is COVID. So again, I don't know, we're all feeling a little desperate as we're still unable to gather, but really your people are wanting to be filled up. And so we need to make sure that worship is done well and has the resources and people and leadership to make that happen so that your people are fed. And then of course people want to be together, and during COVID, of course, people were hungry for fellowship and learning and relationships and stuff. I noticed also that through some of the comments about leadership systems and how things felt organized or not, I think we could pay attention and look at how the systems are running and tidy that up so your leaders are not spending so much time trying to keep things running. Low energy. I mean, the problem with being a congregation that was a little bit bigger is you still have all the things you used to do, you just have less people to do them with. And so there's a sense that, you may need to rescale some of it just because of the number of people. So those are some of the challenges that I sense. Another thing that before we go into what I'm recommending is I look at how ready you are, how willing you are to change. And I think it's a little bit mixed. I think there's some of you who are ready to go to say, maybe we shift the way we do things. Maybe it's a big change. Maybe it's just little changes. Maybe it's just kind of getting on the same page. Maybe that's the change. I think there is some willingness and flexibility. I think you guys are going to be adaptable, but I will say there are some people that will need to be brought along. So good communication, good mechanisms for feedback, making sure we're always including people in conversations, because it's a body of Christ, it's a family. We need to make sure that all the parts of the body are on board, or at least have an opportunity to participate in those decisions. And that's really important if you want the whole congregation to be healthy and well. So what I'm going to talk about next, any questions up till now? Okay, I'm going to keep going and then I'll make space. So I'm wrapping there are 5 key areas. Let me just tell you before we get here, there are 5 key areas that we have found that if churches do well or pay attention or are growing or putting kind of intentional work into these 5 areas of their church life, they tend to be healthier and do well. And kind of, I don't know about grow in numbers. I can't always say that, but the churches, when they're able to attend to these 5 things. So the first one is shared vision, because that is getting you all on the same page and moving you in the same direction. The next one is shared leadership, and that is making sure your leadership's in good shape, they have what they need, things are lined up and they're able to do their work. The next one, and these are in no particular order, generosity, making sure that people are understanding that a life of generosity, of giving all of themselves, their hearts, their prayers, their life, are necessary for a healthy congregation. Next is faith integration, making sure that our worship practices and our education practices and all those things that we do to build faith and community and service are healthy and well and in scale and aligned with our mission and purpose. And then communication or storytelling, making sure that we're a story people and that we're telling stories of impact and what difference God has made in our lives, what difference the ministry makes, and not just leaving it to chance, that we're being really thoughtful about our communication. So I'm going to share with you what I see for you in all 5 areas, knowing that you can't do all of them, at least at the same time. So we're going to talk about needs in all 5 areas, and then we're going to talk about the most important 1 or 2 that you could get busy on if you choose to move forward. So shared vision, I think this is the most critical one for you. And I feel that if you were able to get your arms around kind of what you feel called to now as a congregation, the direction for your future, that those guardrails would help you make decisions, because then you'd know towards what end, towards what goals, and you would have a stronger sense that everybody's on the same page. And then you can make sure that all your resources, human and money, line up behind that. I think that would be a big relief for leadership, and probably Pastor Sue as well, that you kind of know what you're aiming for. The other things that I say about this is that vision has some missional hooks. And so then you can hang things on there, like towards the end of, in order to get to that vision, we need to have this. And then you will have, like, now we know what worship needs to do for us. And so we can shape worship or education or leadership to be able to fulfill those things so that we can get to our vision. So it becomes informative for not only just kind of a strategic plan or a vision, it really should influence the entire way that you run the church based on what you think you're aiming for. I would say that's a top priority for you. Leadership is also there. We need to do some work so that you're as healthy as possible. Looking at systems, clarity, making sure that we're equipping our leaders. None of this is super hard, but having some intentional time and some resources will probably be helpful for you. And getting some goals and action plans. And once you have that vision, of course, then you'll have a lot of good mandates to get going. So making sure that our systems are in place so that your leaders know what to do and are accountable. The next category, again, these are in no particular order. Faith integration is really important. And for you guys, I really feel like worship needs, I didn't hear complaints about worship, but I know your people are hungry. And I sense that there could be more energy and lay involvement and attention paid to worship. So that it feeds your people, so that they are able to really, get deep in their relationship with God through Jesus and each other, and really have a strong sense of being fed so that they can go out and do the good work. And so we want to make sure that along with worship, then there's opportunities for relationship building, because that seems to be an important part. And sometimes those relationships hold us together when we're going through hard times. So we want to make sure we're always making room for relationships to grow and deepen. Again, it'd be great to start Bible studies and stuff back up again. But I would say we want to prioritize the most important things. Story is really a good one because there are little things you can do to communication along the way. We want to make sure that, again, when we were talking about change, we want to make sure people are hearing the process to get to vision and mission and clarity. And then we find ways for them to weigh in and communicate, how they can be a part of it, so that kind of everyone's on board. That's a really important thing. And then we want to make sure that the ministry narrative, the story about what you're doing on the coast and the difference that you're making at Coastside Lutheran is a strong one, and it's kind of dripped into everything that you do. You're talking about the impact that your work is as a congregation is having in people's lives. It's unifying, it's strengthening to your community, and it's compelling as people continue to be. And you will find that people will have a strong sense of who you are when they come to visit and are more likely to stay. Generosity, you are a very generous congregation. Again, this is just a category that we always say that we want to make sure we encourage generosity in every way. The way that we speak, right? The way that we are with each other is in leadership or on committees or talking to each other or supporting. Here's a casserole for when you broke your leg, right? We want generous community. And so we want to think about all the ways that we can develop a culture of generosity, not just with money, but including money. So we want to do that. So what should you guys maybe attend to first? So we're gonna talk after I'm done with this. We'll open it up for questions and kind of processing for the rest of our time, what you heard, what surprised you, and so forth. But these are what I sense as an outsider who's been brought in to walk with you. This is what I heard in interviews, and I saw in the data that came back in the other two conversations or the other two documents. These are the things that I think have the most possibility for impact in shaping a healthy future, no matter what. So what I will say is, I don't know what your future holds. I don't know what you guys are going to decide about, to stay on your own, to merge with another congregation down the line. There's tons of things you could do, to grow a particular ministry in a particular direction, to partner with another community organization. I mean, there's tons of things that you could do. But really, the most important thing is that you guys figure out kind of who you're called to be first. And so I would say the most important thing you could do right now is to work, and I would say with me, because I'm working with you, but we have a process to clarify your mission, your shared values, or guiding principles, as we call them, and create a vision for the future, so that you can see, knowing who you are and your gifts and strengths, and seeing the needs in the world, and what your congregation can be and do in the future. And that's going to help a lot to align leaders and congregation, and even worship, to fulfill that vision. The next thing I think we could do is spend some time taking care of your leadership, making sure that that is nurtured and equipped and resourced in the right way, so that your leaders have what they need in order to be more energized, have a better time, enjoy their role, and have clarity about what they're to do. So that would be it. The other three, faith, integration, story, and generosity, these would be what you're able to do after you do those other pieces. Continue to invest in worship and relationships, making sure you're telling stories of impact, and then always inviting people into kind of a developing that life of overflow, the life of God is so good, I can't help but give it away in every form, generously. So now what we're going to do is process all this, decide if it sounds like co-side, if it's accurate, if you feel like this is in part what you've been sensing and what your neighbors in the church have been sensing. And then the next one would be, how willing are we to step out and begin some of this work? And then you get back to me, and we get busy. So a couple of things before we open it up for questions and conversation. I would say, Henry, maybe you could be the one to share documents, and I will create a one-pager that can be shared with the congregation for next week, and you can also share it with folks here. That's a summary, but nothing is hidden in terms of process or findings. So just know that, and your participation and processing and thinking through, and even being part of conversations moving forward, are welcome and important to the life of this church. So make sure you have what you need to be able to learn from what we've been doing. So I'm going to stop sharing. It's a lot. There is a lot of data. You can read it at your leisure. Good insomnia, good for insomnia. But I want to hear from you. What questions do you have? What do you want to push back on? What do you think is accurate or wrong? What do you want to know more about that we might need to learn a little bit more about in order to move forward? Talk to me.
I just wanted to start by saying thanks, Kristen, for presenting a lot of data there. I'm a numbers person, but there are a lot of numbers running through my head right now. So I think it will take some time to digest and think about it. But it's really helpful to have that sort of comprehensive survey of what people are thinking. And for me personally, I didn't see a lot of surprises. I'm a little bit puzzled where we see those bimodal kind of splits between people having one kind of experience and a different kind of experience. But I think that does fit with us not having as much of a unified vision maybe, and unified and transparent process as we can have. And I think those are pieces that you're proposing we really focus on.
Henry, I also think that we kind of have a bimodal congregation in the sense that we do have a core group that is very, very involved. And then we also have a bunch of people that are much more out on the periphery. So I could actually see some of the split there. The people that are really involved would feel more connected and communicating and whatever, and then the people on the edges would maybe feel a little more disconnected. So I can actually see how that would happen. So Kristen, you may have this in the details. We're actually in the process right now of trying to vision out what worship is going to look like when we get back into the sanctuary and our online hybrid thing,
Yeah.
And so I'm actually curious if there are details in there, like.
Nope. Except for the quite a few people. I was actually adding it up because I tally, so I collect themes. I code the data so that people, every comment counts. And then I was adding up the data of the number of people who are interested in having access via a hybrid of some kind. No details about that, but there was quite high. I was surprised. So that's interesting to me that people are wanting to have access in a different way. But other than that, Pastor Sue, there was not a lot of detail about what worship should look like. I think there's some desperation to be together. Lots of people missing people, and missing singing, which is going to be up in the air depending on how this COVID thing goes, unfortunately. But besides that, they were real general comments. General comments. So it's not super helpful for planning.
No.
But what I would like to see is more people involved in supporting the development of your worship, and so that you have, more people, more support, more energy, because energy begets energy. So hopefully you can get some folks on a team or something to help shape that.
Yeah, me too. So, okay. So would it be possible to maybe in a little while formulate, me and you and maybe a few other folks, formulate some kind of plan that we could pull down a little more into?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
What else? Did you hear yourselves in there? Was it sad to hear some of it? Was it hard? Do you disagree?
I really agree with everything. What baffles me is that neutral section, and it stayed fairly consistent with about 30%, don't know this way or that way. And the only thing when I hear we need to define, is there maybe a survey that we need to do? What would you like to see in a service? I know I heard singing, I heard how do we need to upgrade our service that it maybe appeals to the ones that are in the middle, bring them along.
Yep.
How we go about that. I can say that I just ordered a camera and a microphone so we can have a duo. I've seen it now done in another. I can assist hopefully by helping getting a worship in the church. I'm mapping out how many we can fit in, and then see if we can stay with the duality. I think the future will be, but this can be proven, yea or nay, that it's going to be Zoom and in person.
Yeah.
Some people are more, well, anyway, I can stop right there, but we need to figure out.
There's a lot of appreciation for being able, with busy lives, there was some appreciation and recognition that making church accessible to folks who aren't there or can't make it, that's a gift. To create access to worship that way. But also we miss human beings. So we want to be together. I would say, Pastor Sue, it might be worth even hosting conversations and recording them, because surveys are great, but it doesn't give you end up voting against each other about really specific things. And it doesn't give the nuance of what an experience would be. So I think it's worth having maybe 2-3 conversations, Zoom conversations, and doing kind of just like this, just chatting about what that would be.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do please reply with 4 pages of details about what you'd like to see.
No, but what I was thinking of more was to try to, so what I've been doing so far is when I've been having small groups and people on different Zooms and whatever, we've been talking about what we like about worship. But I guess maybe just put some thought into what kind of questions to kick off the conversation.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Yeah,
with-
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And
I
no one's ever come out of the plague with details about what what worship should look like. So we're on the cutting edge, and everybody's asking the same question. So I
Right.
think we just keep having the conversation until we get to a better place, I think is the way it's going to go.
Hi,
I
can
was
I?
kind of surprised of the feedback from people thinking they're saying that they weren't communicated to as far as what we're doing. I thought that was a surprise because we make it available.
Yeah.
I mean, am I wrong, Henry, Pastor? I mean,
No, I
I
think
think we make it available as possible.
right. Yeah, I am a little puzzled by that, Kathy. I agree. I'm not sure how much that might have been influenced by historical experience versus recent experience.
That's true.
You never know. And also it's just harder to communicate when we're everything for, especially for some people are not as tech savvy, and
That's
Right.
getting on Zoom and doing email and reading the newsletter as an electronic document. So I kind of understand it with those kind of lenses.
And I will
Okay.
tell you that every church says that, and every church leadership group goes, what more could we do?
Exactly.
It seems to be a thing where, you can talk and talk and talk and talk, and people still don't read. So yeah. Catherine has her hand up. Catherine.
Hi, it's actually Kay. Kay
Okay,
Burns.
sorry.
Just a comment. I think that this is a big load for the council to carry, and perhaps it's time for the church to think about having a retreat when the leadership is rested and not, just after work and wanting to get home. This is really important, and I think the church should consider a retreat for the council.
Love that.
That's a great
Love that.
idea, Kay.
Yeah, I think caring for our leaders of all kinds,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
We have
pastors.
everybody get vaccinated so we can all hang out together.
Yes.
Get my last one on Wednesday, so I'm going to
Yay.
be vaccinated.
And
Yay.
tomorrow,
And
I
yeah.
am
I'm heading to
vaccinated.
Florida. I just booked my flight.
I've been shot twice.
Okay, same here.
All right. What else? What was hard to hear? What was exciting to hear? What surprised you? Does it sound like COSIDE from your perspective?
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff, and I think Henry hit on this a little bit in Pastor, is that we have to kind of extrapolate the current congregation and then some of the members that have been in the congregation for a while, and then saying, okay, well, are they responding to the way it is now? Or are they responding to the way things have been years ago? Or are they responding to kind of both? So I think that's, I think that is, I think that was a takeaway for me. And then the other is that the fact that, people love this congregation. There's no doubt about that. And there is a significant place in Half Moon Bay with this congregation, for sure. And a lot of it has to do with our social outreach and stuff like that. But our challenges are not uncommon to any other congregation in Half Moon Bay. It's just not. I mean, we are, and a lot of is the one thing I didn't hear, and you might not. I mean, well, to be here, Kristen, is logistics. We are, people from in the youth. These guys know what I'm talking about. If you're in the peninsula, coming to Half Moon Bay, you're like climbing the Great Wall of China. I mean, they think it's like it's unattainable to go there, and it's really 20 minutes on a good day.
Right.
And so that, we're not down El Camino. We're like. So that, being like, what is it that, out in the middle of nowhere.
We're isolated.
Thank you.
Geographically isolated.
Yeah, exactly. We're out in the sticks and we're really not.
Off the
So, that's, and I dealt with that as an educator out here as well. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, that Route 92, though, it can be a little intimidating for new people. Bill and I talked about that the first time we ever came out to COSIDE Lutheran and we drove 92. We thought we were going out, like, where the heck are we going? The winding, whatever. And now I can like drive it, with one hand. But it's like in the first time, it was like, oh my gosh.
It's
Well,
very funny. very
Well-
funny because I have people that I know that don't like Highway 1. I said, I'd rather Highway 1 than 92.
Well, if you look at from downtown San Mateo to our church, it's like 9 miles.
Yeah,
Right.
It's not like 90 miles. It's just, anyway.
Yeah, really
You know what I'm
interesting.
Behind
talking.
10,000 cars.
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. What else did you hear? What else is picking at your brain?
So can I loop back to the communication question again?
Yeah.
So I do know that several things, like people, we put stuff in the emails and the newsletter and whatever, and then I'll still get people that call up and go, I didn't know that. And it's like, well, but I also know that some of our communication forms have kind of just, I don't even want to say evolved. They've just kind of like happened, like, so Tammy and I, for example, are working on revamping our weekly email, because the weekly email started off like actually when I was the admin, and we were trying to get people to be readers in worship, and people complained that they didn't want to they wanted to see it before they came in, right? So the weekly email just started by like sending out the readings. And then it was like, oh, if we're sending out an email, remind people about this, right? And so now it's just become this big, stream of
Unwieldy thing.
consciousness.
Yeah.
This is all what's happening, right? And so now we're trying to like make it a little more structured with like colors and sections. And so it's a little easier to read. I think our website needs to be revamped, right? Our website kind of has the same vibe to it. It's like, whatever the heck is going on right now gets thrown on the front page, and then it takes 3 months for us to update it. And so Bill just pointed out to me, you still have Taizé worship on there. Lenten Taizé worship is still on your front page. I'm like, yeah, we need to get that off of there. So I think we could do more in that area to make it, so I think the information is going out, but I think it's not easy for people to necessarily access it and get it organized.
Well, and I will tell you this. So what we have found is huge shifts in congregational communication trends. For instance, it used to be that you would have a publishing style newspaper, right? A newsletter that would have all the happenings, and it would be like a newspaper, and you'd have to dig through it to find your stuff, right? The youth news or the Bible study news or whatever. And that's a publishing model, which says that the onus is on the reader to find the data that's pertinent to them. But what happens is people are used to now very customized emails, right? So, Amazon heard me talking about something and then I get an ad for it, which is freaky enough, which is another conversation. But so super targeted ads and communications to people. And they're used to not having to work very hard to find information that's for them. So what congregations are having to do is, instead of publishing everything in a nondescript way that just lists thing after thing after thing, and people have to dig through it to find their thing, it becomes, the onus actually is put on the congregation itself to curate the information so that it is in a helpful form, and that the most important stuff is weighted so that people can see, oh, this is the most important thing. And if I want to find the Boy Scout wreath sale at Christmas, that might be at the bottom, right? So the congregation is actually doing the curating like you would at an art exhibit, right? The most important things, and the lights are put on it, and an experience is created so that the most important things are highlighted. And that requires having an editorial process where you decide, sorry, the garage sale advertisement is not as important as this week's prayer. And we're going to have to just make some decisions about that. But that requires somebody to do that and then maintain that, right? And it takes staff, and it takes time and leadership. And oftentimes smaller churches don't want to shut down the kind of feel that anybody could put anything in the bulletin, or anybody could put anything in the announcement. So it is a little bit of a discipline, but it is a move where people are dealing with communications in a much different way than we used to.
Yeah.
That's a long-winded way to say there's work to be done, but
So I would say, like, right now, our newsletter is still in the publishing style.
Yes.
And Tammy and I have been moving our weekly emails into more of the curated.
Yeah, good.
making
That's
sure
and
that
that's
the
probably the
voices
best
that-
thing to do, to spend time on the email first, because that's probably what people go to first. Yeah, good. All right, what else?
And just to tag onto that, I think a good move is to have a unified Zoom link, which, by the way, council members starting this week, we're moving to using the worship link for council meeting. And I think pretty much everything else, right, is the idea.
Yes.
That sounds good.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, now that we know how it works, we can just use that one link. So, yeah.
Pathfinders, I'm curious about those when you heard this feedback, did anything strike you?
This is Michael. I was just very, even though we've had weeks working on this, before it came to the congregation, I was just in awe of the volume. The kind of data points that you were able to identify, and it is much larger than I thought it was going to be. But I think it's really, really good because it has it in categories that it feels like it's manageable.
Yeah.
It's work,
yeah,
but it's manageable.
Yeah.
I am just, I need to go back through and look at the attachments because it is a lot of data. You kept warning us of this. But you really need to go back and re-look at it and reread it. And this dialogue has been helpful as well, just hearing from the leadership as relates to, their assessments and their observations. But I'm very excited about listening with the congregation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say for the year, from year to year to year, the leadership in the congregation, and Henry, will appreciate this because I know he's a data guy and a numbers guy, but the sample size, it was a little skewed because you have the same people, right? And so I just wanted to note that it's just a point of reference. It's not good or bad. It is what it is.
Yep.
But that's the power of those voices are significant because they go through, between 3 to 5 years or whatever,
Right.
So I wanted
and
to
obviously
bring that
your
up.
people felt safe enough to tell the truth, and that's actually good. And now they feel like they've been heard, and we can take it seriously, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, I was going to ask Nicole, did you want to say anything about the community listening panels and what we learned from that? I mean, that data can sit next to this, and probably later on down the line, it probably will inform, what you guys sense is the most important things, priorities that you want to get back after COVID, or alongside COVID, whatever we're going to do with our COVID lives. I mean, that was an added element. I think it was good for you to hear, but you can sense, I mean, my warning was do not start programs to deal with what you hear, even though you're excited about it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that experience and what you think about that, the findings from that alongside this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the listening panel was very eye-opening, and like it's amazing to know like what this church already does for the community, but it's also very interesting to see what other people think that we can do for them, and the ideas that they had, what we can do with the land or the sanctuary, other ideas, and how to get more, like for me it's just how to get more people, like with these findings today. Like I was kind of sad to know that I'm probably one of the few people that have small kids that are under 18 that go to
Exactly.
church.
Right.
And I mean, and I feel horrible because we don't attend church. 1 minute, please. 1 second. Sorry. And like, I want to be able to get the kids into church more often, because for me growing up, like I had no option but to go to church, and I loved going to church, and we did so many fun things as kids and with the youth program. And so I want that for my kids. And I just hope that with what we've learned from the listening panel, we can get more younger people with kids into church. So.
And your son came right on cue, by the way. Just
Right.
put that in there.
It was like
Yeah, I'm still
advertisement.
here.
It was
Who wants
beautiful.
something?
I will tell you, and actually I meant to say this. I have all these notes that I didn't get to, but people tell me how, our goal should be getting more people. And I will tell you that that's not necessarily a goal. That's more of a byproduct of doing something else well. So you can say we're going to have better communications, or we're going to tell the story more, or we're going to have such fantastic worship and education for such and such a group. Then when people come to you, then they find the thing. So it's very rare that people set out to say, we're going to get more people. And it just happens. Usually if you build it, they will come, to use the old analogy. So you want to have something that you would invite people to, right? And so if you're feeling kind of yucky about how things are going because of COVID, and we're feeling bad about ourselves, or it's not as robust as it used to be, that's not a great time to invite people to that experience. So we often see worship attendance and membership as byproducts of a church that's working really hard on its own, building up of its own body, right? Taking care of itself, because then people are inspired when they come to you. So I know that people want to know the answer to getting more bodies in the door, but it usually means that you're taking good care of yourself and you're doing the things that you are feeling called to do with excellence. So.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
What kind of data do we have, or how do we extract I have the question, what do the people want in the future from our church, or who do we try to attract? I know it's going to be families with little kids. What do they want in a service? What do they expect from our church? Did I miss something, or
No.
data do we have to know which way we need to steer this ship?
So that work this is really just kind of getting at what is, and then the next step is to turn our head to the future and really clarify who you are, what you're good at, because you don't want to try and be the Mariners, right? You can't be the Mariners, right? So
I hear them every Sunday.
Yeah. Who are you? What do you believe in? And really strengthen that kind of stuff so that you have a strong sense of where you're going. And then we'll create some vision for the future. And then that will be the point at which you say, yeah, do we have some passion for families? What could we do that's not on Pastor Sue, you see, because it can't all be on her. So you're going to have to build your systems and your leadership up so that you can do all these other things that you want to do. Yeah. So it's kind of it's a slow process, and we start from kind of the very strategic beginning with who are we and what are we called to do? And then we get into how would we design that? Mm-hmm.
So I have kind of a similar statement, I guess, about the community service thing. And I'm still kind of processing it, so it might come out a little bit half-baked. But I think, I think part of the burnout problem that we're feeling around the community service is that right now, our community service involves a lot of labor-intensive activities, right? Like the book fair. And Henry, man, your family has been running that for the last several years, and it's just, huge. And the same with the Pumpkin Festival is also very, and I would actually say the Pumpkin Festival is more as a fundraiser, not really a community service. Yeah. But anyway, both of those things are just huge labor, hard work. And our congregation is growing older. And so those two activities are a huge burden given the physical capabilities that we have, right? So, so earlier you said we shouldn't add things, but so maybe not add, but I think we need to think about changing what we're doing.
No, and I would say, I did hear people say, we do so much. And of course, y'all can do whatever you want on your own, right? I mean, there's nothing to say that Henry can't go serve sandwiches on his own with his family at whatever the group is. So I think you can encourage people to live this out in their own lives, but together corporately, perhaps you pick a thing or two that fits who you are and what you can do so that it feels like you're able to do it, right? So it feels like it's not killing you to, lift all the boxes and stuff. And that it's aimed at the right thing. Fundraisers are great, but wouldn't it be cool if you could also deepen faith or deepen relationships at the same time that you're doing something for the community? So you want to give yourself permission to let go of enough of what was to free you to embrace kind of what you want to do in the future. So yes, to your question.
And then the other thing around community service is our people are really involved in the community, but through different organizations.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people, senior center, Rotary Club, I mean, tons of things. And so, yeah, it seems like what we need to think about what we want to do with our community service, and then and with the idea of it being faith building.
Yeah,
because that's the value add that we're going to have, right?
Right. And anyone can go serve at any of those fantastic places and do it. And it can build your faith, but you really need to be, again, you're going to have to curate experiences for people so that it fulfills all the things that you want, because you are a faith community. You are not a social service agency. And so you get to say, whatever we do will serve, but it's also going to build relationships, and it's also going to deepen faith. Right. And that's, you guys get to say that. Well, I had and I would say also, I was working with a church in the Bay Area, and I met a guy who was creating software, and I ended up finishing my time with them before we could finish this. But I really wanted to create software for churches where you could map, and this was a long time ago, so maybe there's a way to do it now, where you could map impact. So you could put pins or somehow create some kind of image of all the different ways that your people are already doing service, so that you don't feel guilty that you're not doing more. Because as a little church, you need to conserve some of your energy for feeding the sheep, as it were. So it would be really fun to go, how could we acknowledge the impact of our faithful people and all the great stuff that they do, but not feel like we always have to do more, right? So anyway.
But on the other hand, like, not that we have to do more, but there also needs to be places where new people entering the church, and even us ourselves, can develop our relationships, right? And have like stickiness, so people can become integrated into the community and have places where they can form relationships.
Exactly.
With each other, right?
Exactly.
And worship is great, but I found that the relationships happen more in the community service and in the small groups. Like that's yeah.
And so some churches have gone to like small group models where they're like community groups. And so they do some study, some service, some relationship stuff. And that's kind of a way that they, involve people in a smaller setting, and get some of the service work done so that the whole church doesn't have to do it. It's done by a small group. So yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Okay, so what's next?
So next steps, if as you process this, and do take some time to kind of read through it, give yourself some time to live in it a little bit, because it is a lot. And then once you're ready to go, we will say, let's move forward with that mission clarity piece. So we'll be spending some time, and I don't know actually if it's the Pathfinder group or if a new group should be involved. I don't know how you guys want to run that, but that's going to be much more of clarifying mission, naming, articulating some shared values that shape the way that you do because every church is different, and you have to be really clear about, everybody worships, or typically churches worship, but how you do it, and what do you believe that happens there, and what do you believe about getting together, and what's your role in the community, and all these things about how you do your thing is different. So we want to name that so you can make good decisions, and make sure your DNA is replicated in whatever's next. Then we start to build a vision for the future. What does that mean for us? What's our big, audacious thing that we want to live into? And probably that leadership piece needs to be attended to also, so that you are in a better place to tackle some of the ideas that are going to come out. So what I would say is there's a team that needs to do the mission, vision, values stuff, and probably a team that should start to work. And it could be council, but to work on the leadership stuff. Some churches, I will tell you right now, some churches say we can only handle one thing at a time, which is okay, because you want to do it well. Some churches say we can't afford to wait. We need to get after, especially the leadership one. We need to have that going simultaneously or whatever. So it's really up to you. So you all need to talk, because I'm here, but you all need to talk about, how do you feel? What are you ready to tackle? What's a bandwidth? of the congregation, and who are the folks that have some energy for this. I think you will find, especially the mission vision one, that it will gain energy. You will build energy because you'll be excited about kind of gathering under one thing. Is that clear?
It is sort of.
Right, so, I know we're going to talk about this at council on Wednesday, and then next Sunday, right? With
Yeah. Yep.
more broadly with the congregation. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I will create a one-pager that you can share with people and send out, or that you can, publish in whatever you need to publish in, because we're not going to hide this. It is what it is. And so the more people are kind of hearing where we are, and then the more people that can be brought along, the better you will be. So I'll create that and send that to you, Henry, and Pastor Sue.
Okay,
Great,
sounds
thank
good.
you.
Sounds good.
Thanks for the all the work of the. That's it for me. I was just going to thank the Pathfinders and Pastor Sue for all the good work that team did. We got a lot done, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pathfinders, for all the work.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, we just started meeting in February. I mean, my gosh, we did some great work.
Good
Mostly
stuff.
those guys. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Any other things before we close out today? This is just the beginning, friends. Just the beginning. So have good heart. God is at work, and your people love your church. So that's a really fun adventure to be on.
Mhm.
And
I'm
COVID,
actually feeling very energized after this. I mean, I feel like we're moving forward now, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so even though it's still, I feel like we're working on the problem. So we're
Yeah.
doing
yeah. And it gains steam, right? And people get excited. And so I even think just from now on, I think that you'll be gaining some good energy. Awesome. Thank you, Pastor Sue. Can you pray us out of here if there's nothing else? And of course, I'll be with you again next Sunday, and glad to share or answer any questions. Feel free. Those of you can contact a Pathfinder and get my email if you want to pass along any questions, or Henry or Pastor Sue, whatever, if you have any conversations, or if Henry or Pastor Sue, if you think of anything that I need to address next week differently, obviously much shorter and summarizing things, but that would be great.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think you can pray us out of here.
All right, I will. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
With you.
Let's pray. Oh God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Gracious one, we thank you for being with us during this conversation and for sending your spirit to energize us as we go forward. We ask you to continue being with us as we journey forward. Open our ears so that we can hear your voice and lead us into the future. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.